I'm Dr. Mark Everard. I'm a scientist. I specialise in the aquatic environment, although I've covered quite a range of sustainability issues as well. I'm also an author, write a lot of scientific papers and books and magazine articles. Plastics in the marine environment are obviously a growing issue, simply because of the increasing volume of plastics we use and their persistence once jettisoned. We shouldn't throw the baby away with the bathwater and say that plastics are bad, because there are many good things that plastics do for us in terms of longevity of food, protection, durable infrastructure, and so forth. The list goes on and on and on. The issue is just simply, really, the lack of common sense society has in throwing away such a valuable resource, because it has a high energy content, it has a high recyclability. So what the hell are we doing throwing it away to begin with? In the marine environment, obviously, once the plastic gets there, it will tend to disperse, accumulate again where ocean currents send it, and have all sorts of impacts on biodiversity. So there are other good reasons to not throw it away, quite apart from the positive reason of recovery of value. The way to reduce plastics in the marine environment is to not look at the marine environment, but look at the source of the plastic, which by vast majority is the terrestrial environment. So things that are flushed down loos and things that are thrown into skips and into bins that blow off in the wind, stuff that ends up in gutters and so forth, and just tends to end up in surface drains, and that all obviously ultimately ends up in the sea. Now, I think there are two main opportunities here. One is to ask some sensible questions about where it's prudent to use plastic and where it's not. If you take the example of let's say a window frame, or better still a water pipe that might have a 100-year service life, that's a very good use of a plastic material, because it's durable, inherently recyclable, saves digging up the road every 30 or 40 years to replace alternative materials. So that's a very prudent use, and you can recover and return. But as to whether we should be using plastics for short life purposes, such as, you know, short-term takeaway food wrapping is a very good example, where the waste is inevitably contaminated, dispersed, likely to just accumulate in rivers, lakes, on farmland, etc. That's probably a less sensible use. Why don't we go for a material there that is inherently compostable or at least biodegradable, so that you know, we don't have the trouble of cleaning it and collecting it. It can break down naturally if thrown away. Ideally, we don't want it thrown away, but can be composted and have a beneficial after use. As I said, there is a contrast between those applications for which durable, persistent, long-lived materials make eminent good common sense, and those that don't. Now, the second thing then is to make sure that there's some sort of sensible infrastructure and economic incentive for the return of plastics, because they do have, for all their positive benefits, that they have a high embodied energy and a high energy content. That is a real waste to society to throw away. So let's see if we can't collectively recognise that and get much better with our recycling infrastructure, take back and recovery incentives to make sure that the plastics in that long-term and medium-term use do get returned and recycled and don't end up just being thrown away. Well, biodegradable plastics seem to me a vastly missed opportunity, frankly. Basically, most of the biodegradable plastics are still made from oil, and that oil has taken, well, 250,000 years to form. And then we decide that we're going to put some links into the polymer chain so that it breaks down quickly and we can throw it away even quicker. I just think it's not the wisest use of such a long-lived material, so that you know, it just breaks down quicker. It's still a waste. I would much rather go for stronger bags, bags that can be reused, or paper alternatives or whatever. I just don't think it's a wise use, most of the biodegradable applications. So really, from the 60s, 70s, the environmental crises and growing environmental awareness and need for sustainable development has in many ways been about realising that that linear model is broken and doesn't work. So we've been forced to find a new model. Now, if you take something with an inherently high economic value, like gold, like copper, and to a certain extent glass and the other stuff you put in now in recycling bins in the municipal centre, there is an economic case for recovery. But extrapolating on, we've got to just get smart and cyclic with all of the things we use, and not just use them once and throw them away, with the inevitable consequences on the supply side and the waste side. Now, we're talking about the cyclic society, where the clothes you wear eventually don't just get handed on to someone else, but maybe made into something else. Your car, there are European directives now, the end-of-life vehicles directives, wherein elements of cars and growing proportions of cars have to be recycled. This is the beginning of a social transition, and it's a transition wherein it's not just government that are going to set rules and we will follow them. That's not the way social revolutions happen. It's a matter of regulatory change, economic change, to reflect the fact that it's wasteful to do these things, that resources will deplete, so we have to be wiser about their stewardship and use. But it's also about people changing, so that we don't just throw things down the loo or into the dustbin as if there isn't a way to which they'll go. We live on one planet which is really quite small in galactic terms, and there isn't an away, there isn't an invisible box in which things disappear. We live within our own mess, and with 6.2 billion of us now, rising to 9, 10, possibly 11 billion by 2050, that box is too small for us all. We've overused it, and we have no more ways to throw things. So we have to get clever, economically shrewd in policy terms, to create a situation where we reuse, recycle, are efficient in the first place, and plastics lives in that box of social change. In fact, the plastics in many ways can lead the way because of their inherent material efficiency, their ability to do jobs with a relatively small set of molecules that last for a long time before you have to change them. So they maybe ending up on the forefront of this cyclic revolution, and we're beginning to see it with growing infrastructure for the take-back recovery, the physical recycling, that's the melting and squirting, or the chemical recycling, taking to feedstock and rebuilding of plastics.